Good afternoon to all the obesity warriors. Glad to be with y'all on this wonderful Friday afternoon. I figured it was time I jumped in and did a traditional video. It's been a while. I traditionally go live, but I just wanted to kind of like talk about a few things I've been seeing and just comment on them, here via the video. So, once you guys see it, jump in the comments and let me know your thoughts. I want to start a little bit with the Retta conversations I've been seeing. Just looking at, from all of the results that's coming out and what we've saw over the past week. Some of the observation that I've seen as it comes to like some of the muscle wasting, I've seen that dispelled, and I think that there was a lot of like controversy over the hunger cues, whether you're hungrier on Retta versus tirzepatide. And what it looks like is the two things are happening simultaneously, right? Because of the massive rate of energy expenditure going, against the GIP. It looks like, it can go either way based on your own personal biology as to whether you are somebody that gets suppression or not. It looks like that. And then as far as like the other interesting thing is it burns so much, it appears, of the liver fat that in fact it looks like, the size of said organ could be smaller, which a lot of times is also calculated with lean mass. So if you think about that, when you look at what they consider muscle, it also oftentimes is including organs and moisture, things of that nature. So when you actually put all of that together, it makes sense as to why you're not actually losing actual pure muscle. It's more the fat that's actually being reduced from the actual liver that's showing up as, more attributing to, the loss in some of that loss in muscle. And that makes perfect sense that it's not actual muscle mass, And so there's that. And then it also was, it also kind of made sense to me that it seems as though people that are actually already lean tend to not lose as much muscle as those that are obese, right? Now, the two beneficial things there are, a lot of times people that are already lean have already been making good use of the muscle, so the body recognizes that it still needs that muscle, right? It that kind of cues the body to say, hey, well, we need that muscle, so we're gonna, make sure that we're not, taking from that muscle in order to, suffice, for, the burn, right? And those that are obese, it makes sense because it has not been being used and there's more of it, so it kind of goes wherever it needs to go to get what it wants. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. So very interesting. Those are kind of some of the takeaways. I see that we, there's always a point of contention, with the hunger cues, the food noise, and the actual muscle versus fat loss, right? The other thing that just, I think is going to be a topic that I continue to hammer away at is going to be people looking, for weight loss that consider themselves in a stall or a plateau, right? Because the basic information that most people have is if you haven't lost total body weight on that scale in a month, you are considered in a stall, right? Or if it's been a couple of months, maybe a plateau. When in fact, what I'm still seeing is, I don't want to say everyone, but a lot of people still are not looking at the right numbers, right? They don't know their numbers. They're literally making assumptions and then creating plans based off of total body weight, right? You cannot make plans off of your total body weight, right? Because that tells you how much, but not what. So again, listen to what I said. The scale, right? The general scale, not the Renpho, Morpho, Scan Nova or DEXA scans, but the general scale tells you how much, but not what. It tells you how much, but not what. And you need to know the what, because if you don't know the what, you don't know how to proceed, right? Because now you're sitting there creating plans thinking that, hey, I stalled, I plateaued, when in all actuality, you have, probably not. You know what I mean? You probably are at possibly the weight that you belong at. Because the thing that we're also doing is we are creating goals based off of BMI, and I implore you guys, you got to stop doing that. Your weight loss goal cannot be solely based off of BMI. It just can't be, because it doesn't make sense for those that have been obese majority of their life, right? And for those that carry a lot of muscle. And here it's getting ready to go back to where I was just at. If you don't know how much muscle it is that you hold, you don't know how much it is that because again, muscle is what you want to keep. So if that is being factored into what's going to get you to reach that optimal BMI, right, below 25, right, that's wrong, because you don't want to lose your muscle. So if you're not putting that muscle in the calculation, how is it that you have a target? Your target. How is it that you believe in the target weight you're going for? Because in fact, it's wrong. And you actually, once you get the number, you can plug it into ChatGPT, Google, all kind of things, and it'll give you a layout, of what, you should probably be going for. Because truth be told here, what we all should be aiming to lose is body fat. Simple and plain, body fat. Not overall weight, unless, like I explained before, you are near or clinically obese. That should just be maybe the goal for a little bit, 6 months, a year, whatever it takes you. And then once you get to, a lot of us, because I'm speaking to the OGs now, people that's been on this more than a year. That's what I'm talking about, for a year or more, right? The old OGs that's been on, let's say 2 years or more, they probably should know this information. But the ones, or maybe not, but the ones that's been on it for about a year that actually got to their goal, or a year and a half, like went through the trial, and you got to where it is that's a proper, not your goal, but for a sufficient, amount of actual overall or total body weight loss, you really got to dive in and start looking at what body recomp is about, because you're chasing something that doesn't make sense. You can't keep chasing total weight loss on the scale and saying, oh, I just ain't going down, because in fact, you could be and not seeing it. Because really the goal should be to lose your body fat. Lose the fat, keep the muscle. So get you a good scale and revamp your plan. And what that plan should actually have is a plan for eating more. Because a lot of people are under eating, right? And if you're under eating, then what's happening there is, your metabolism has probably slowed down, as well as that dip in weight, because you've had such a dip in weight, your body's not as big, so you're not burning as much, resting, right? So you've under eaten for so long that it will take longer to lose weight, right? Because you're smaller, so it gets harder. But you also need to make sure that you're eating enough overall, protein and carbs, believe it or not. You want to eat, prioritize protein first, though, to protect that muscle. But then obviously this is to get enough energy so you can lift weights. Because again, not people that just get on the journey, haven't done much with their body, got a lot of body fat, overall, and just want to kind of get some weight off. This is not necessarily for you. This is for those that have been on a journey for, let's just say, a year and a half, or maybe even 2 years, and they actually have lost a sufficient amount of weight, but they need to still lose body fat. Because that's where a lot of people are. They're trying to lose the body fat. And in order to do that, you got to kind of do those things that I talked about before, which is eat more, number one, and make sure you're eating protein, right? Smart carbs, right? And then you want to make sure that you do get some walking in, maybe a mile or two, and utilize an incline, not just flat-footed, where you can. And then you want to make sure you lift weights. It's very important that you lift weights, because that's where the muscle, the maintaining, not necessarily bulking, because if you carry a lot of muscle, you don't need to bulk, but you need to maintain that muscle. You got to send that signal that's saying, hey, I need to retain this muscle. So in order to retain that muscle, you got to work it. You got to work it. It's going to get torn, but then what's happening is it'll get rebuilt, but it'll be rebuilt stronger. So that way, when you're actually lifting, it won't, be the tear down, and you'll actually, even if you're not getting big, because it's not about getting big or bulking, what it is about is keeping what you have, right? Once you figure out what that is. And then you'll just lose fat, because that's the thing. You just kind of need to lose the body fat. But if you lose everything in the midst of it, then you continue to not like what your body looks like. Because a lot of people have gotten smaller and still appear the same to themselves. Not even body dysmorphia, but with not losing enough body fat and losing muscle, right? And so you start to not like what you look like. And then, listen, a lot of people that's even saying this could probably only lose another 20 pounds. And that 10 or 20 pounds, if maybe a guy, but then some of the ladies, just 10 pounds. The 10 pounds that you dying to lose probably isn't gonna, completely make you look the way that you're desiring in your mind without actually lifting weights and doing that recon. You gotta do it. You can't get around it. And I know it's so hard for certain people, but I'm telling you, you are on a hamster wheel if you do not come to grips with you need to lift weights. You have to. So you can keep trying to run from it, but you have to. And I don't mean you got to get in there and squat nearly 400 pounds like a football player, like my son. I'm saying simple dumbbells, just to make sure that the weight, that the muscle recognizes that it's still needed, so it does not get wasted, right? So there's that, you know what I mean? But that's something that I feel like is important, because I continuously see people that's, I'm in a plateau, I'm in a stall. A lot of people. It's not just one person, a lot of people. And I just can't lose anymore. But you may have already arrived. You are at your destination as far as total body weight loss. What you got to look into is how to get rid of some of the fat you still have and turn it into muscle, or maintain what you have so it can be revealed, right? So once it's revealed, then you'll look better in the mirror and you'll start liking what you see and stop chasing something that you don't see yet, right? So, that's kind of, what I wanted to jump on and talk to, speak to everybody about today, to make it make sense, as what it is that I have been seeing. And I just wanted everybody to, really like take a minute and really start, thinking about that and stop just looking at, BMI, which doesn't make sense. You got to actually really invest in the scale. I'm telling you, you have to, because you don't know your actual body percentages. And if you come all this way on this particular drug, you owe it to yourself to know, how much, to know the actual science, you know what I mean? And get to what it is that you want. And finally, don't be afraid to set up, a little bit of smart lipo. I'm not saying everybody got to run out and get a tummy tuck, but a little bit of smart lipo, a little bit of body contouring is okay, because you've been obese for so long, and you might need it for that last little bit of stubborn fat that's not going to go nowhere, for those flanks. And, you might need a 360, the back, the flanks, the abdomen, you know what I'm saying? Right up under the chest, that, not necessarily vanity, even though vanity is okay, that's what you're going for. But just to actually, you know what I mean, to be at total comfort and ease, because you're only going to lose anywhere from maybe 10 to 15 pounds from that anyway. Maybe 5 to 15 pounds, I should say. But, that might be it. You know what I mean? So set those appointments, get those consults, and look at that. You know what I mean? Rather than going to get some, peptide that might be, sketchy. You know what I mean? Because, if it's FDA approved, then, or at least from a 503A, 503B compound, you're good to go. All right, y'all. So there's that. I just wanted to jump in and try to, impart some knowledge and create, a video, and hope that it's helpful. So like I always like to end all of my videos, obesity warriors, stand up. We're in this together. Later. And I just wanted to also add that the funeral is for my friend Jason is tomorrow. So, me and my wife will be heading over to that first thing in the morning. So, prayers out to his family. I dedicated my last live to him. So anybody, if, you have the ability, I would, ask that you send prayers out to his family, because he was a young guy who, had kids and grandkids who, will deeply miss him. So just shout out to him. And I will see you guys on this coming Sunday at 8 o'clock, just like usual. All right, y'all. Later.